The following compilation features unsettling and spine-chilling tales sourced from Reddit's horror communities. Reader discretion is strongly advised. These narratives may contain graphic descriptions, psychological distress, and themes that could unsettle sensitive individuals. Proceed with caution, as immersion into these eerie stories may provoke fear, unease, and sleep disturbances. Enter this realm of Reddit's creepy horror stories at your own risk, as the line between reality and the macabre may blur within these chilling narratives. I'm part of an organization investigating unexplained missing persons cases, separate from CIA or FBI or police or whatever else. You can think of it as outsourced work for cases that others can't be bothered with. I'm a rank 2 in the organization and have access to rewritten entries of evidences and documentation. Most of them are just murders or abductions, something that takes years to get any leads on. But for the first time in my 10 years working this, I was asked to purge this entry from the archive. All evidence is always preserved, basically forever, regardless how insignificant. Secondly, we never censor names of anything, as even for rank 2s it is crucial to know this. So I just need to dump this anywhere I can to save what I at least have access to. Duralex, said Lex. Now viewing document J53073. As per requested archiving policy for this project, the names of streets, locations, brands, the city and people mentioned in this entry were removed or replaced by generic terms or names corresponding to the document's alphabetical sorting, adhering to the author's intentions while also keeping consistency without resorting to full redaction. On the 12th of April, year 2015, at 1825 in the city of Johnstown, a notebook was found on the outskirts, containing the experience of one of the residents during the disappearances that occurred. Research of the event can be found in document J0UR473X in category J. This is an edited and rewritten version copying the exact style, grammar, punctuation and phrasing of the author to preserve authenticity. Access to the original scanned journal can only be obtained by rank 3 and above staff through code 5. Access to the original journal itself is only available to rank 5 and above staff through code 7 on research site Delta. Do not publish or distribute the information contained in this document outside the organization. Do not discuss or reference the information contained in this document verbally. Written reference is allowed, but only by indexing the document ID via system link. Do not edit or add to this document. If correction is required, report this to rank 2 and above staff through code 12. Read contents. Due to the recent events in my area, I've decided to start a journal. I've never done anything like this, so I guess I'll learn as I go. I will be recording every day from this point on, in case it gets any stranger, or in case I won't make it out of here. So this will possibly be a good memo of myself or a documentation of the things that transpire here. Since I'm a computer engineer, which is a rather broad term, but I work with hardware basically, I am not too used to writing with pen and paper, which should be clear from this terrible handwriting. I will try my best to make it at least readable for myself, since I can't guarantee if anyone will even find or read this. Day 1. This isn't exactly the day 1 of these events, but rather of when I start my journal. Just felt like marking days would help me make sure I get an entry in each day. It should also help me track time, as it's difficult now. This has been happening for the past week or so. I will simply note down what I know so far, up to this point, and then continue as the days go on. It started one day with a fog that was very out of character for our area. We do have fog often, but it does not last longer than 1 or 2 days. Our fog, or any fog for that matter, is usually cold, I guess due to the nature of what fog is. This fog, however, is warm, or at least warmer than your usual fog, not steam-like warm. Anyway, with this fog, on the 3rd day or so, all electricity was gone. It is gone still, which makes it something more than just a power outage. Then went all the other electronics that were not even powered directly. I've assembled and tinkered with my fair share of computers and other devices, and I have never encountered anything like this. The insides are not fried or anything, they just don't work. That's it. There is no current on any of them. None of my electrical or voltage measuring tools work, Even the old ones that don't use fancy digital displays like the Yosh ones, just nothing. Somehow, even batteries, which usually produce power through a chemical reaction, just don't produce any charge. This journal is now my pastime, since I don't have any hobbies that don't involve some form of electronics. Considering how dependent people are on electronics these days, I thought the streets would turn into chaos, but they didn't. Our neighborhood is very calm and friendly. Though I rarely communicate with anyone outside the internet, they still treat me well. During this week, people were talking about all of it. The signal was gone along with the power outage, so people actually had to walk out and talk to each other in that lukewarm fog, with no possibility to report this to anyone. I am a shut-in by nature, so I was mainly listening. Some people were obviously distressed. Some couldn't get in touch with their family or friends outside the area. Others were worried that we're basically stranded, with no crucial infrastructure such as hospitals to even support us in this crisis. People agreed that we need to regulate ourselves, with no governing bodies to speak of, so laws were established to follow. Minor, obvious ones, like no going outside once it's dark, sharing with others, helping others in need, contributing to society, so to speak. I didn't do much contributing over these days. I'm a bit useless in all fairness, helped carry some stuff here and there, but being a scrawny IT guy, there's a limit to my abilities. Being very antisocial doesn't help in these situations, so I mostly just tried to keep out of people's way. The first day this happened, a few people went out of our area to a nearby police station or city hall while the car batteries still worked, but they returned stating that apparently we were walled in, claiming that they crashed directly into a wall when they tried to leave, which they didn't see in time due to the fog. Some people confirmed, as they said they visited their friends near the other exit, but saw the wall and empty houses. Sounded like nonsense. I decided to investigate this later. The fog itself does not seem to be affecting anyone's health so far, so there's no danger in walking around in it. Since refrigerators don't work, everyone brought the food that can spoil to our local butcher shop, which has a room-sized freezer. Of course, the cooling system is off, but it's well insulated to not let heat in too fast. So they basically placed all of our ice in there to keep it cool for as long as possible. Everyone knows each other here, so people just come in, take their produce from their shelf and go out. There was some drama once or twice, but the rules are there to be followed. To avoid chaos, the butchers regulate it, like only one family in the freezer at a time, and that only the butchers can open and close the door. I mostly live off snacks, so I don't have much to freeze. In regards to cooking, gas stoves are a godsend. I have an old gas stove, so I can actually cook food. And to think that I was considering buying an electronic one. Not that I'm much of a chef, but as good as those noodles are dry, they are meant to be prepared in boiling water. I live in a small apartment by myself, moved in here to work from home a few years back, with occasional customers out of town. With the current happenings, though, my knowledge is fairly useless, with no computers to engineer, so to speak. The whole atmosphere is very apocalyptic, but somehow also very serene. Nothing tragic has happened, not in our area at least. I can imagine that if we had a hospital nearby affected by this, then some patients there would be in danger, though we have yet to determine how widespread this fog is, or if the fog is even to blame for the electricity issue. Guess that's quite enough for the first entry. I'll go into further detail about things I've missed. I will go out exploring tomorrow, as there isn't much else to do. Possibly ask the neighbors in case they already know something I don't. Day 2. Reading over my previous entry, I realized how badly it's structured, obviously because I am writing whatever comes to mind. I will try to structure and plan out my thoughts from now on, if only to make it easier for me to reread. I also did not expect that I could write this much, which also reflects on my wrist, which is not used to holding a pen for such prolonged periods. Today was fairly fruitful. I went around, eavesdropped on a few conversations. People were discussing what they're going through, having no contact with the outside world, talking about lost loved ones, trying to figure out what's going on and how to continue, complaining about strict laws and so on. I don't have anyone I could call family outside, and all of my friends were online, so I couldn't exactly relate, but I did understand what they were going through. Also reached one of the borders. First off, I was somewhat delighted to see that not just my home turned into an occult shrine with candles and dim lighting strewn all around. Some have gas lamps or fireplaces to light their houses, but other than that, it's all very primitive. Well, primitive is a bit harsh, I guess. Rather, it's very un-21st century. I would have probably turned it into a hashtag if I still had access to social media. The withdrawal is real. Having extensive knowledge of zombie stories, this felt very much like one. Everyone's sticking together trying to get through the hardships, though with the absence of an immediate tangible threat, it's not quite the same. However, as much as I'd like to picture myself as an incredible badass during a zombie apocalypse, I know better and would prefer something like that not to happen. Speaking of threats, Josh down the street mentioned a strange figure slowly walking outside in the fog at night, headed north. No one else seems to have witnessed it, and even though Josh is not the crazy sort, I wouldn't put it past him to have a very active imagination, especially with the lack of technology to entertain him. Something to keep in mind though, since no one goes out at night, or rather when it gets darker, and especially considering what happened at the border. There are 2 exits out of our area over 2 small bridges, as it's separated from the main city of Johnstown by a river and a large forest on the other side. All of those have this border on them, apparently. I went towards one of the bridges, the way we sent our chosen group in a car, as that was the last reported place of this wall. I did not find a wall there, but I guess it might as well have been one. I realized I reached the border once I saw 3 crashed cars close to the bridge entrance, one of them being the car we sent. All the cars were empty and airbags activated. No blood or injury occurred, it seems. Surprised it took 3 crashes for people to stop trying. All of the cars were wrecked in a similar way. Something you'd get out of driving into a lamppost at around 30 km approx 18 ma can be deadly, but with the current safety measures in cars, not likely. The front of the cars definitely looked like they hit a wall with slight burn marks on them. Now, I'm no car or crash expert, but I doubt that simply hitting a wall can actually burn off the paint and leave marks on a car. I would be half correct in thinking that, since as I have mentioned there was no wall. The wall was this same fog, more just obscuring everything beyond the point of impact of those cars. It was so thick beyond that point that I couldn't even see the other side of the river, or even halfway up the bridge. When I reached out to try and feel what exactly the cars hit, as there was obviously nothing there, I couldn't get my hand past that specific point. There was nothing blocking it, more like pushing it away. Sort of like if you stick your finger into thick jelly, or like trying to press your hand against a sheet of rubber. It was just pushing me back. I tried to push as hard as possible, but it wouldn't let me go far, though the further I pushed, the warmer it became. With my limited knowledge of gases, I deduced that since if it's the same fog, which is lukewarm, compressing it would force the heat to be concentrated in the compression point rather than be spread across the whole fog, which also explained the burn marks on the cars. Right? I don't know. I might ask someone else later who dug into it more than me. Tried to check if you can somehow get over it, and threw a piece of the car's broken windshield wiper as high as I could. Predictably, it bounced off. Well bounced is a bit of an exaggeration. It was more like throwing a wet towel at a wall. It just stopped and slid down. Is it a natural occurrence that we never experienced before, which was also never documented? Was it placed by someone? Who and why? A piece of experimental government technology, aliens? Hopefully I won't get too attached to these conspiracies. Day 3. Had a strange dream today. Not that strange dreams are uncommon for me, but this one was related to the fog. All I remember was just standing out there, in the fog, and seeing nothing in any direction, just this white, warm, weird fog. Nothing else happened. I walked around, and nothing. It was just fog and silence, or rather deafness. Kind of like when your ears start ringing, but then the ringing subsides slowly, though in this dream it never subsided. It was as if my hearing was stuck in a weird limbo between going deaf from a burst of sound and the start of ringing. Not even sure if that makes sense. That might be the effect of the fog, or the boredom it brings, or the crushing depression of being stranded somehow. Can't really tell. Decided I'd write this down before I go out, just in case I forget. Back from my trip now. As I mentioned, there are 2 bridges that lead to the city centre from our little area. The one closer to my place that I've checked before, and the one further away which I decided to check today. Took me about what felt like an hour to get there on foot. Should have probably lent a bike from someone. Long story short, it's exactly the same, with only one car crashed there and one that stopped along the way. It was empty. Apparently they were caught when the batteries gave out, or they just gave up once they saw the crashed one. All the houses in that part were completely empty for some reason. Maybe they managed to get out. Maybe they just moved closer to our little neighborhood, scared of the fog. No clue. Josh claims that he saw another figure again, on the same street, heading the same way. Apparently this one was taller, so probably a different person. Said he couldn't make it out, but it was someone walking slowly, slouched forward. Depressed maybe, or drunk. This isn't exactly a cheerful time. I have a view on the street he's talking about, though a bit further on. Might keep an eye on it today. Someone told me that Jane, across the street from me, was looking into the fog as well. She's a chemistry professor at our local university, so I would assume that she might know at least something. She wasn't in today, though. We'll try tomorrow. Saw a few kids playing hide and seek in the fog by ducking to the ground. Only then noticed that if I look down at my feet, I can barely see them. Day 4. Didn't see anything on that street. Need to ask Josh later if he did. Visited Jane. She somehow got a sample of the fog or something I didn't quite understand, nor did I understand what she showed me in the microscope-type device. But she said that it's not just any fog or a type of gas she encountered before. She claims that it replaced our air here, literally. The oxygen we breathe is the fog, which is somehow suitable for our lungs. This seems to also be the reason electronics don't work, since current can't travel in this air. But apparently heat can, since fire works fine. Jane also said that we should be dead, since this should also interfere with how our brains work somehow. She was as confused as me. Well, less confused since she knew what she was talking about, I hope. I'm not even sure anymore. She looked extremely tired. Seems this fog mystery kept her awake for far too long. That, and taking care of her sick mother. She said that it wasn't fog-related or anything, but just old age. I didn't want to probe too much. Jason, my next-door neighbor, is as thrilled as ever about this incident, though. He is a bit of a nature junkie, and having no devices active, he claims that we can finally go back to our roots. Says he was visiting the woods and felt at home. I would call him a hippie, but he was always a very reasonable person. Just liked everything natural, which is a quirk of his I accepted long ago, but now it was unleashed to its full potential, it seems. He offered me to join him. I agreed. Not because I want to walk around in nature, far from it. I am a child of human technology and social networks. I wanted to check the other borders. The woods are opposite the 2 bridges to the city centre I've mentioned, so the other walls would be there, I assumed. I asked Jason about them, and he said that he did encounter those walls, but couldn't make out much. Same as me, I guess. Won't lie, I was expecting him to call it a force of nature. Said he tried pushing a stick through as far as he could, but the end of the stick got charred and it started crumbling, so the heat part from my highly scientific theory was still there. Day 5. I came over to Jason's today to meet him for the trip, and saw one of his pendulum clocks, which reminded me that I haven't mentioned the time issue since the first entry. I have lost all concept of time at this point, since I do not have any of those fully mechanical wind-up, pendulum or other clocks, so the only way I see time now is when it's night and when it's day from the sun that's already obscured by the fog beyond recognition. Visiting Jason that morning was the first time in about a week since I've known what time it is. It was exactly 11:30 a.m. when I visited. It's honestly nothing too spectacular, but I guess that was due to my lifestyle with the job not actually having a set schedule and more based on if and when people needed my help. We went to the forested area. He knew his way around here, so it was pretty quick. Or it might have just been the fact that I had someone to talk to on my way there. The woods looked menacing from the distance due to all the fog, though getting closer made them look fascinating. The fog looked more like a body of water, gently, carefully curving around the trees, forming a thick layer closer to the ground, same as in the city. As soon as we got there, Jason looked worried. Not until later did I find out that he was actually devastated. He claimed that half, if not more, of the trees were gone, explaining that the wall moved, that it was farther back before. I could see some footprints, most likely Jason's, behind the wall in the dirt, proving his point. The only thing left of the forest that he so loved were about 15 to 20 trees, so I can't exactly blame him for getting depressed over it. This wall was exactly the same as the others. On our way back, Jason rambled a bit about how wonderful nature is and how this whole thing is breaking his heart. I'm not much of a nature lover, but even I got sad about it. The guy has a certain charm which makes it easy to empathize with him. We separated and I decided to check the longer road to the city center. As expected, it moved as well. The crashed and stopped cars were nowhere to be found. The fog moved about 2 or 3 buildings inwards, by about a block. Is it moving towards somewhere? I tried checking the buildings closest to the wall to warn them about this. They seemed empty from the outside and no one answered the doors. Had to leave as it was getting dark. Visibility is bad as it is with the fog. Night only makes it worse. Day 6. This morning I saw the figure Josh was talking about on my way back from the butcher's. Being a lover of both horror and sci-fi settings in stories, having read quite a few books, watched a ton of movies, and played numerous games, and experienced hundreds of interesting and horrifying interpretations of people's imagination, I can say for certain, something very obvious I assume, but seeing something with your own 2 eyes in the real world is very different. No matter how obscure, obscene, or confusing a creature can be, it is always a creation of the artist's mind. You can interpret it one way, someone else can interpret it another. Reactions to it can vary, and they don't always need to align, because it is fiction and mainly produced for entertainment purposes. Of course, different people find different things entertaining, but I am generalizing. When something like that is encountered and witnessed in a physical form, it just leaves your mind racing, which is probably the reason for such a long introduction for this. Some dolls, mannequins or sculptures of strange creatures can only come close to this, but they are still only replicas, physical manifestations of someone's imagination, limited by our own experiences and knowledge. The figure was no human, definitely not. It might have been once or might have been mimicking one, I don't know, but it wasn't human for certain. It had a humanoid silhouette, slouching forward, many long, slender appendages, thin body and backwards bent legs. I'm not even sure if it was standing in the fog or formed from the fog itself. The only thing I think I understood about it was the face, or lack thereof. The only facial features the creature had was a mouth filled with what I assume were fangs of varying lengths. It was slightly agape as it stood there, seemingly staring at me, with the fangs slightly waving, individually, as if they were very lazy worms or blades of grass. Writing this now, I realize how dependent people are on associating everything with familiar things. I can't remember if I saw anything else, or if the thing even had anything else to its body. Hands, feet. Was the face I described even on a head? Was that thing a single creature, or a part of something else, something bigger? I don't know how long I've spent staring at it, but time seems to slow down when the adrenaline kicks in, which is to say that your reaction time speeds up, rather than time actually slowing down. Regardless, I ran. Before that moment, I never actually ran anywhere in this fog, which was a fairly shocking realization for me. I guess I didn't have a need to, but it gave me a bit of a new perspective, and I guess a level of understanding on what Jane said. It was like running knee-deep in water. I didn't feel like I was running slow, but the pressure and resistance was very noticeable. I didn't look back or around. I don't even remember which path I took to get home. It was all autopilot, driven by instinct. It wasn't survival or safety. No, it was something else. Terror, fear, something very primal that drove me. There was no inherent threat from the creature. I wasn't being chased. I wasn't being attacked or intimidated by it directly. It was just unfamiliar, unknown, unrecognizable. I don't know what to think of this situation anymore, how to continue. Should I check in with the neighbors? Should I even step outside? Would staying inside even help? Oh, note 001 more. A single page of ineligible text continues. Various research and decryption methods did not yield satisfactory results. The text was larger than the author's typical writing, and the handwriting itself, even if it did not make sense, was confirmed to be that of the author. Several predictions were made and suggested by various researchers from rank 2 to rank 4 staff, and one by a rank 5 staff member. However, none aligned. Some letters were similar, and the researchers concluded that the entire piece of text consists of 95 distinct words, most repeating, though no meaning can be gleaned from them. The translation team went over 19 different languages and could not find a point of reference. Apart from that, most letters were definitely Latin Roman script. Due to this, to avoid placing inconclusive data into this rewritten text-only document, the page was redacted. Research notes on this page can be accessed in the document with the scans mentioned in the introductory note. Entry 7. I have lost count of the days. Rather, I can't keep count anymore. I don't know if a day has passed or not at this point. It just doesn't get dark outside. It never did get very dark with this fog, but it got at least slightly darker, which was the only way for me to keep a sense of time passing. Only now I realized how much of an impact that encounter left on me. I barely have any memory of writing the previous 2 entries. Rereading it was pretty hard. It all comes back in flashes. I remember that I tried to sit down several times to write in the journal after it, but couldn't. The shaking just never stopped. Eyes couldn't focus. I don't even remember seeing the thing I described there. Did I even see anything or just imagine it? Maybe it's the sleeping pills having this effect on me. I can't even tell anymore. I have never been this doubtful of my eyes or memory. I've relied on them so much over my entire lifetime, but questioning them this much now is something I never thought it would get to. Was note 002 where the following entry was crossed out rigorously by the author. Each word was crossed out individually several times, then going over the entire sentence. Through text analysis, all the words were recreated which are included below. The author does not refer to the following text in future entries, so it is not clear if this was left in intentionally or the author simply forgot about it. A theory of the text not being written by the author was disproved by analyzing the handwriting, which matched perfectly to that of the author's. The following text is recreated in the same manner the author left it on the page. It was that not sure if the thing that was in the fog is still. There was no thing. Nothing, not the thing. It was simply standing, just the fog, not the thing, the creature, the part of it that, not going, it's going, the part that it's not going anywhere, but yet it's, after behind, near me, near them, just there, not there. Entry 8. I managed to confirm that what I saw that day was real. Hoped I was wrong, but it's real. They are real, and they are here. I think they're here for me, or for us. Why me? Why us? Why this place? I don't understand. This makes no sense. I will find out. I need to find out. Why? Entry 9. I have to keep writing, keep counting in my head, keep thinking. Need to keep myself sane. Need to take hold of reason and stay on track. Keep the mind working and active. I will study them. They keep appearing more and more often, on the streets, even in the house across the street. Walking, skulking, as if they own the place. Barricaded my door, pulled the blinds and curtains over my windows, just peek out once in a while, not letting them in. Can't let them see me or hear me or however they perceive things. The 2 of them standing, 2.5, next to each other, touching each other, feeling themselves and one another, searching for something, maybe communicating, unclear. And this howling, how have I not noticed this before? The constant deafening howling that keeps trying to burst into my house, to torture my ears, as if it's digging into my skull. Was it always here, or did it only start the day I encountered one of them outside? Surely others can hear it too. I need to check up on them. I need someone to talk to, if there even is anyone left. There is also the issue of the fog and its form. It started to seep into things, onto buildings. It's becoming more watery, more gooey rather than the gas it was before. It covers buildings, lampposts, signs, everything that's outside, slowly creeping up the walls and objects it can reach. I wonder if it does the same inside houses, or with people. It doesn't creep up those things in the same way, probably since they are part of it, or come from it, or however they work. Entry 10. It's all gone. Everything is back to normal. As normal as it can be in this fog, that is. Yes, it's still there, but a very minimal amount. The amount I'm used to. When did I even get used to this abomination of logic? It's no longer crawling up things. I walked out today. Things seem to be back on track. People walking from their homes to the butcher's freezer, chatting, kids playing hide and seek in the fog. I was concerned it was all a dream, that since the very moment I saw that creature I just lost consciousness and only now woke up. However, the previous few entries were definitely not done in a single day. There is also one more proof I found during my walk outside. It was Josh. I visited him to ask if he saw any more of those things. When he invited me into his house, I asked him about the stranger on the street he mentioned, to which his eyes widened briefly and he motioned for me to come into the living room. He sat down in a chair facing the window and nodded his head at someone walking in the middle of the road. I watched intently. Recognizing the figure, it was Jason, who wasn't his active self, walking there rather lazily. I mentioned to Josh that I know the man, thinking he might just be depressed over the further disappearance of his safe haven in the wooded area. But Josh quickly put his finger to his mouth and pointed at Jason, who was getting enveloped by the fog. I was startled at first. The fog tendrils were crawling up him just like the buildings and signs. However, they were only starting to do so at a certain point in his walk, as if he was walking into one of the walls of fog. Josh was silent the whole time, and once the fog started to slowly envelop Jason outside, he leaned in a bit, starting to breathe heavily. At this point, no words needed to be spoken. Jason was going through a transition from human to one of those creatures, starting with his legs, then the arm that slowly waggled forward, turning into several tendrils, and the rest of the body. Since he was getting further and further, we didn't get a good view of the whole event, as it got enveloped by the vision-obscuring fog. But Josh's face of sternness said that this wasn't the first time, and basically confirmed any questions I might have at that moment. I nodded, trying to keep my cool, and turned to leave. Not because I thought it was a good idea to go outside, but because my mind was racing. I had nothing else in my head but to escape, just to get away somewhere. Josh grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't do anything unusual. A law is put in place. Follow it." I couldn't gather what he meant. We talked a lot. I can't note everything down, but he said he figured it out somehow. He said to follow the rules, don't step out of line, don't interfere, act normal. I couldn't understand half of it. After seeing that, what is normal anymore? I kept quiet the entire time walking home, looking all around me, trying to notice anything. I know this was basically what he told me not to do, but human curiosity is a dangerous thing. It took me a while to realize what he said and why he said it. I kept monitoring the outside, the buildings, the fog, and eventually the monsters. It started to make sense. The people outside don't turn into them, they get replaced by them, as if they walk behind a curtain and a creature walks out to replace them. What am I even talking about? How does this make sense? All this makes no sense at all. I'm sure I'm not dreaming. I need to check in with someone else, but I can't be sure. Do those people get abducted? Do they come back? Will I be replaced the same way? I need more time. I need to keep sane, keep my mind straight, follow my routine, keep calm, keep watching. Entry 11. I've had a dream, which tells me that everything I've written previously was definitely real. Even if this dream was very vivid and tangible, I could definitely tell it was a dream, simply because it wasn't me. I was looking at everything through someone else's eyes, or rather, looking at myself from far away, from a different perspective. I was conversing with the things that walk outside, communicating with them, making friends. It was very bizarre, but very comforting, very warm. It felt right, somehow. Decided to note this down first before I go back to investigating those things outside. We'll continue this entry on return unless I lose track of time again. There were more of them than ever, all over the streets, walking, touching, and talking. It looks like they are just living, just part of Johnstown now and not the invaders that I saw. Even the streets, buildings, street signs, they all turned into their streets, buildings and street signs. They look strange now, alien, Something like coral and rock fused together, no longer the marvel of society, just some corruption, a mockery of technical genius. Even the doors on buildings got turned, made bigger, wider, and they still open. But for them, for those things, expanding as if it's a mouth to let them in and closing behind them. Noticed a trail of blood in the corridor from my neighbor. Didn't hear anything at all. Seemed there was one more trail on the street, turning a corner. I followed it when I made sure that none of them were nearby. Checked the corner. There was a corpse. She had a knife. Assume she was trying to fight them off, the monsters. Disturbing thing is that I'm not disgusted by this or scared. I'm angry. I'm furious that this happened to us, to our town, to my town. I need to do something. Should I do something? I should do something. Something needs done. I'll prepare. Prepare for something. For battle. For survival. For whatever comes next. Lost note 003 per. Several pages are missing after the previous entry and after the next. It is clear that something was written on at least some of those pages, as indentation can be found on the one present. However, no eligible text can be made out. Potential drawings or sketches are speculated to be present, though no concrete confirmation of anything specific is decipherable. The next entry seems to have been continued by the author very shortly after the previous. Thus the missing pages are speculated to be either unrelated or drafts of the next note. Due to the intensity of the anomaly in the area, it was not possible to perform a thorough search in the area or gain access to the author's mentioned dwellings. My entry. I am finished. I have ran to the forest, or what's left of it. I don't know why here. I had to pick a direction. Maybe I went here looking for Nature Boy. Maybe he'd confirm my theory. I thought this town was lost, no longer ours, taken over by them, those monsters, without as much as a fight or an attack or a siege or anything. No, it's far worse, something that not even I can comprehend or thought I can't, but it somehow now makes sense to me. But I am one of them, and they are one of us. We are one and the same, living parallel to each other. Them walking around, conversing, touching everything. They were simply reflections of our regular behavior, not mimicking, but doing the same thing, like fractals in nature coming out exactly the same. So are we two living beings, two ends of a fractal, self-similar across different scales, doing the same things, walking in the same patterns, existing in the same space of the same universe, yet completely different, parallel. We don't turn into them, they don't turn into us, nor do they turn our buildings and streets. Both things exist, just in parallel. And whatever happened here, whatever made me see all this, us see all this and experience it all, it was a sign for us to realize that there are laws in this universe, rules that need to be followed. The dead people I've found, they weren't murdered, they killed themselves. They were afraid, scared of the truth, probably saw themselves turning or phasing between themselves and the creatures, and couldn't take it. The monsters, those things, they are neighbors, not intruders. They are our fellow beings of this universe, just existing, living, but not meant for interaction. Exist and let others exist. That is all. Those people went against the laws, against the rules set out, and so sanity was taken from them, their feeble minds crumbling, destroying themselves, be it by the will of the universe or the lack of will itself. It is harsh, but it is the law. Do not interfere, do not fight it, exist and let things exist. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If you dare to explore further, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling tales of horror and the supernatural. Remember, the shadows hold endless mysteries, waiting to be unveiled. Stay tuned for more bone-chilling stories as we continue to traverse the eerie depths of the unknown together. Until next time, may your dreams be free from the haunting echoes of our tales. Or perhaps not.